Hello everyone, this is SWTOR here, back with another video. Today I have for you guys another SWTOR discussion episode, and today we're going to be talking about when to subscribe. Now, I've made videos in the past discussing subscriptions and the subscription model in place, but I haven't made a full video dedicated to it and what, in my personal opinion, warrants a subscription. In this video, I will have talking points on the screen and also in the description down below. This will allow you guys to skip to a specific point I talk about and to follow along with the discussion. Also, the in-game audio in this discussion gets a little bit loud towards the beginning, so I just want to apologize for that in advance. Anyways, that's all I have for this intro, so I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's get right into this discussion. Alrighty guys, let's get into this discussion right now. So the first little talking point that I'm going to be going over is going to be, what player status are you? Now when I'm talking about player status, I'm talking about if you're a free-to-play player, you're preferred, or if you're a current subscriber. Now this is the main thing when it comes down to exactly deciding when to subscribe. Because if you're a free-to-play player and you've been enjoying the game, really at any time, I would highly recommend to subscribe to Star Wars: The Old Republic, because you will get access to all of the past expansions, and will be able to get to the max level cap. You will have unlimited player slots, and you will be able to access everything with absolutely no restrictions. Now, if you're a preferred player, this really comes down to what content you actually want to do, and if you are fine with dealing with some of the restrictions, you're kind of sick and tired of the restrictions. So if you are a preferred player, then when to subscribe really comes down to when you want to be rid of all those really annoying restrictions that come with it, and or if you're doing some of the content that actually gets unlocked when you are subscribed. The main content highlights that are unlocked when you're subscribed is you can do operations, aka the raids of the game. You can do ranked PvP, and then also you can do regular unranked PvP with no restrictions. Those are just the main highlights, to name a few, when you are subscribed. So those are always very nice. So if you aren't exactly going to do some of that content as a preferred player, then the time to subscribe, it really just depends. Because I know with me, personally, I've spent some time as a preferred, just in general, because I haven't been doing some of the content that really warrants a sub, and I don't feel like I should subscribe to the game if I'm not really doing any of the content that really warrants a sub, because at that point I'm just throwing money for absolutely nothing. And then if you're a current subscriber, of course, that can determine when to subscribe. I mean, if you're still enjoying all that stuff that the game has to offer, you don't want to deal with the restrictions, and obviously the time when to subscribe is, like I said, just kind of like at your discretion. There's really no point really at that point, because you can just, like I said, kind of decide for yourself, or kind of figure out, hey, I might lose some of my current stuff that I have if I decide to become preferred, or any of that good stuff. Now, I will put a link in the description down below to a Reddit post on the r/Star Wars: The Old Republic subreddit. It's not really a Reddit post, but it is in the actual subreddit itself. And it's a very, very well detailed and well made kind of like guide discussing the difference between free to play, just a preferred, and a subscriber. It's very useful if you guys want to see some of the differences just right there in actual text. And I would highly recommend just viewing that as well to see some of the differences. But the next talking point we're going to be going after is going to be expansion releases / large updates. Now, when I'm talking about this, I mean, currently I know that there's a lot of players that won't be subbed to the game until there's a really big release or something that's really new with the game. And that can also be a time to kind of decide when to subscribe. I know that there's a lot of players, for example, that weren't really subbed until Gods from the Machine, or Gods of the Machine was added was added as a full operation, since at that point it wasn't really fully developed at a certain point in the game's kind of past. So people would stay unsubbed and wait until the full operation was released and ready, and then people would subscribe and then just tackle all of the content. Not everyone was like that, but in that case, that can also be kind of a factor with deciding when to subscribe. I know, like I said, that a lot of people, when a new content patch comes out, they've been unsubbed for a while and they just jump back in after that, or when a new expansion releases. I know that a lot of people that are really heavy into the story subbed when Knights of the Fallen Empire came out, and then once they were done with that, they unsubbed, and then they waited until Eternal Throne came out, and they just played some more of the story, and or they did some of the other content that was released in the form of flashpoints and all that good stuff. So if you want to have a point on when to subscribe, it really just comes down to if you want to be one of the players that waits until there's big content patches, or in general, just really it can come down to just like other factors as well. I mean, that's the main thing to really know. And that kind of leads into the next talking point, which is simply, what content are you doing? This is a question that I ask myself pretty often, and it's also a lot of questions that I feel like a lot of players can relate to, is when you kind of ask yourself what content are you doing, it really can decide when exactly you want to subscribe. Because I know that there's some people that aren't doing a lot of gameplay, and they decide that, you know, they're going to unsub for a month or two, then they're going to resub and come back to the game because they're a little burnt out. I can completely understand that. And then not only that, there's also the example of players that play a ton of raids, just constantly doing progression and all that good stuff. And then after a while, when they're just done with all of that content, they decide to take a rest, stay unsubbed, but still play the game because they're able to access a majority of the things. They just have to deal with a couple of pretty annoying restrictions. And that's kind of the way I am at some points, is because I have stayed preferred for a while, because there's been some downtime when I haven't been really playing operations, and then I haven't been playing PvP absolutely non-stop, so I didn't really see a point in subscribing at that time, and then later on I decided to subscribe. It's even an example right now. I'm currently subscribed to the game, as you guys can probably tell, because my Galactic Command XP bar is highlighted, and when you're unsubbed it's not highlighted. But it's kind of the similar thing with me. Obviously, I left the game for a while, so I wasn't subscribed during that point. But even before then, I was unsubbed for a little because I wasn't really doing much of the content that really warranted a sub. So I kind of asked myself, you know, what would be the point in subscribing when I'm not going to be doing any of the stuff that really benefits a subscriber? I know you're going to have to deal with some of the restrictions, and I completely get that. I mean, a lot of the restrictions can be annoying, and like I said, I totally agree and understand where people are coming from, you know, in that aspect. But that's the main thing that I feel like a lot of people should ask themselves when they're deciding, you know, when exactly they should subscribe. Because if they're going to be doing a ton of raids, then 100% you should be subscribed during that time period. But if you're going to have downtime when you're playing the game, then I feel like, you know, it might be a good time to stay preferred for a little, maybe play the game and whatnot. But if you don't want to just spend money on a sub when you're not doing anything, then that is something to look at. So that's going to be at the end of that little talking point. The next one is going to be restrictions galore. Now, I think almost any player in this game can relate to when they were preferred and or free to play, is that the game has some pretty insane restrictions. And I mean, this is kind of expected. I mean, this is a game that is an MMO, and they do want players to subscribe. That is the main point of their business model. So, of course, I mean, they're going to have restrictions. But the main thing is that people really look at when they are unsubbed is, you know, typically the credit cap, because when you're preferred, you can only get 350k, and usually people that were subbed at one point and then they just unsub, they realize, you know, hey, that's probably not the best deal. So that is something that a lot of people do look at. Not only that, but there are restrictions to purple gear, artifact gear that you can actually equip. And then also there's just some different restrictions that are kind of miscellaneous, but they do cause a minor inconvenience. These can be voided if you do have cartel unlocks. And when I am unsubbed, I do have a majority of these cartel unlocks in the game completely unlocked. And I know there's some other players that do that as well, because you can get almost all the benefits as a sub while being unsubbed. The only main thing you really have to still deal with, unfortunately, is just that credit cap. And of course some of the PvP restrictions, and of course just not being able to do operations. Those are the main things to look at. But if you don't really want to deal with any of the restrictions and you don't have any of the cartel unlocks, then subscribing is the way to go. But if you can handle some of it and you're not really playing any content that really warrants it, then of course it still is always an option to, of course, just go that route of, you know what, saying kind of like, hey, you know what, I'm going to keep playing the game and I'm just not going to stay sub for a time being, but if I change my mind later on, then of course I will subscribe. That is what I've done in the past. I know that there's a lot of players that have done so as well. So that's kind of my take on it. I know that some people will disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. I actually would love a disagreement because I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below on this topic. But I know personally with me that when I play just some PvP and stuff, I'm not really playing as often. Then I feel like it's not really worth the sub because I'm just throwing money for no reason. But of course, if I am playing a lot of that stuff and I feel like it's necessary, then a subscription is worth it. I feel like that's a lot of things, or a lot of stuff that people kind of don't realize, is that restrictions are annoying and all, but at the same time, you really just got to look at what you're going to be doing with the game, and then deciding from that point if it's really worth a subscription. And that leads to the final point, and kind of talking point, is in conclusion. So in conclusion, when to subscribe is completely subjective, and I'm not trying to say that, you know, this video was kind of a waste of time. I'm just saying it's kind of subjective, just kind of with what I said right there, just in this actual discussion video. Like I said, it comes down to what kind of player are you, because in the end, if you're having fun with some of that content and you want to stay subscribed and you don't want to deal with some of the restrictions, then by all means, of course, subscribe. I just know with the current player that I am, I'm not going to be subbed to the game when I'm not doing the content that warrants a sub, because I can get through a majority of the restrictions with absolutely no issues, even as preferred. But like I said, it really just comes down to what you want, and that is something that people should always look at, just especially in gaming, is, you know, you're here to have fun, and obviously, I mean, if you're not having fun or if you're burnt out, it's not really worth the sub. But, you know, just depending on what kind of player you are and what you want to do with the game itself, and that's something to look at. The main thing I would say, though, is if you aren't doing too much of the content in the game you're waiting for a release, there's literally nothing wrong with just being unsub for a while and still possibly playing the game. But I just think, personally, just have fun with what you want to do. But some of the things that I mentioned, I feel like are a little important to just, you know, kind of like consider with this discussion piece. And it is something I still, of course, wanted to talk about. And just kind of, like I said, discuss in a video. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this SWTOR Pod discussion video. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. As always, if you guys enjoy these videos, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.